Welcome to GAEL Unscripted, where leadership meets learning and real conversations drive real impact. I'm Ben Wiggins, Executive Director of GAEL. Join us as we go beyond the headlines with Georgia's top education leaders. Let's elevate the conversation. Welcome back, GAEL family, to another exciting episode of GAEL Unscripted. Once again, we have Dr. Mitch Young, Superintendent of Forsyth County Schools, with us. He was with us earlier for a podcast on leadership development, and it just so happened the day that he was here in Athens doing that podcast, it was January 21st, and we were talking about the upcoming weather storm that we were going to have the next weekend. And I said, Mitch, would you mind doing a podcast just talking about superintendents and weather decisions? It's one of those things they don't teach you in superintendent school. I don't even remember us talking about it in district office PD with Keith Porter. Maybe Keith needs to add that on there.
Without question.
So let's just talk about it a little bit. And again, some of our members may not have been with us on that first podcast. So just briefly introduce yourself. Let them know who you are.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Mitch Young. I'm Superintendent of Schools in Forsyth County, Georgia. I am in year 1.6 at this point.
You're a veteran.
So I'm definitely grizzled. I'm not sure if I'm a veteran or grizzled, but ironically, it was 1 year ago, almost to the week, 1 year ago, that as a new superintendent, with 3 out of 5 brand new board members, we were at the Carl Vinson Institute here on UGA's campus, and while we were here, the winter winds were blowing, and so to your point, having not lived through being the superintendent for a snow day, my very first one was with a brand new communications director and a brand new board of ed sitting in the room with me in downtown Athens as I tried to figure out how to navigate my first one. So that was...
Well, I'll tell you, new superintendents, if they don't already have a strong understanding of the importance of a communications person in their district, they will on the first weather
without question
emergency, won't they? So let's talk about weather. One of those things that they don't teach us about when we're getting ready for this. Talk to us about how maybe you were prepared to make some of those decisions before becoming superintendent. You went from the principal chair to working at the district office. Yeah. So did you have a little bit of time there, some on-the-job training to go through that?
A little bit. I mean, as a principal, you're thinking about how it impacts you from that side of things. You've got teams that are scheduled to go or not go. You've got some folks that are gone on a trip. Do you tell them to come back, or do you tell them, hey, mom and dad, we're going to chip in some school funds here, but we're going to tell them to stay, and so you think about it from that one lens. So you do think about snow days, not to mention the academic side of it, of making sure your teachers, they're online learning, all that. The district level, it's a whole different, it's a whole broader sort of view that you've got on it. And as deputy superintendent, I had an office 2 doors down from the superintendent, and he was phenomenal. Jeff Bearden would bring me in and help me see the inner workings, and he was really preparing me for this job. And I'll just tell you, I don't think there's anything he could have said or done, or any notes I could have taken that would have made me prepared a year ago to handle that first snow day. I mean, the most important thing I think probably that I learned from being in proximity to him was that we've got a phenomenal leader in our safety department named Todd Shirley, who has been doing it for a long time. And as you said at the beginning, we've got Dr. Michelle Dugan, who's our comms director, our comms chief, and she's phenomenal. So with those two people at my side, I think we can handle it this time.
So there's a good point right there, GAEL members. Maybe you're a new superintendent, or you're going to be a superintendent in the future. One of those things is identifying, do you have a communications person? If you have a communications person, have you empowered them to be in the lead on some of that information to help you making those decisions? And do you have someone, what did you say the position is for the gentleman you mentioned?
So our chief of student student safety and support. Yeah, he's over that. Todd Shirley, well respected throughout the state. Dr. Michelle Dugan, and then my chief of staff. The four of us probably. Well, I say the four of us huddle initially, and I don't want to get into the weeds or get ahead of you if we're going to go there. But along with those three folks, then our chief of transportation. And our facilities chief, that's sort of the inner weather circle. You know, and you know, at the end of the day, it's a team effort, but somebody's got to make the call at the end, and that's every year I've learned where I become Facebook famous.
That's right.
With our families.
Like you become very famous if you can cancel school or not cancel school. But I think it's important you talk about that team, and you're empowering that team to gather information, meet with you, keep you abreast, and you're not out there just trying to do it by yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk through it. We're sitting here, it's January 21st. We're a few days away from the weekend coming, expecting some bad weather. What does that look like at Forsyth County School District?
Yes.
Talk us through that process.
For sure. Our safety team, and I talk about Todd Shirley as the chief of student support and safety, but his team, they've got 4 different weather services that they're constantly analyzing. You know, we've got our Perry weather system, and so our contacts with that, the National Weather Service. I think what people fail to realize sometimes, we've got a board member. Let me do a side note here. A board member, Chris Grimes, who worked with our local emergency services, and then GEMA, who's on the board, and he brought this point up last night publicly at our board meeting. Which is so important for people to understand, is that you don't look at just one weather model. There's 3 or 4 different models of weather that your national service is tracking, and your local weather experts are tracking. So we're looking at everything. Sometimes a little overwhelming, but our guys have been doing it so long that you know that they. So we'll talk today, for instance. We'll talk a couple of times today. Tomorrow we'll probably talk 3 to 4 times throughout the day, and just trying to do the best that we can to see what's coming at us based on the scientists. Yeah,
and the information's changing every day.
Constantly.
That's a part of your team. And remind our listeners again, who all's on that team? You mentioned your cabinet.
Yeah. So the members of our safety, our chief of student safety and support, our communications director, our chief of staff, our facilities director, or chief, and our transportation. Yeah, those are all the folks that are directly. If you may feel like, hey, it's not going to be that bad, but if the buses won't start, well, then you have school. You may think it's not that bad, but you find out that you got pipes bursting or a frozen parking lot here or there. All right, that's not going to work. So these folks, you know, on the eve of an event, you know, we'll have folks working 24 hours a day that are out there scouring the roads, scouring the buildings, scouring the parking lots. You know, that's just what we do internally, and then there's a lot of things we do externally.
Yeah, I think even sometimes even our principals and our teachers and staff, they don't know all the behind the scenes work that's going on. They don't know that facilities and transportation director are out there looking at buildings in the middle of the night, early in the morning.
Absolutely.
They're driving the roads, all of those things. You mentioned your communications person, Dr. Michelle Dugan, is it?
Yeah.
Being on your cabinet, I think we're seeing more and more of that across the state. Superintendents having their communications person as a part of their cabinet, because that position is just becoming so important.
It sure is.
As the years continue. So talk about, what does that communications team play in this process? What does Michelle have to do?
Yeah, so, you know, Michelle has been a teacher in our system. She's been an assistant principal in our system. She's worked in human resources at one time. She's got a unique set of lenses that set her up to be a really effective communications chief, because she's had those positions. She knows what people need to hear, you know, in a variety of things. And she's a parent in our system, was a teacher in our system one time.
It really does.
So understanding, you know, not that you have a different message for each group, but understanding the timeliness and the tone and you know, when and how to reach out. But the other thing that she's, you know, we joke about this. We sort of developed this under fire last year with our board members in the room with it. but there was not a real spelled out process. And Michelle kept every email, every note that she took during last year's snow days, and kind of turned it into a standard operating procedure, as standard as you can be with a fluid situation like this. Yeah. And so there is a time of day that if we're going to have an event that we're going to call it, she's going to let the principals know first. And I'm going to let the board know while she lets the principals know. Then she's going to let, I'm going to let the cabinet know while she's putting a thing out to, the teachers. And then we get those groups knocked off, and then we blast that. Because what we don't want is for any of our employees to find out on social media before they hear it from us. Yeah. Now, they may not answer their text or their, see it on their email, but we want to at least, so we're always going to try to prep the principals, most importantly, ahead of everybody, because they're the mayors of their little villages. That's right. And so she developed a process for that. That now it's plug and play. Yeah,
I think that's a great point. GAEL members, whether you're in a position now or the future position, you heard Mitch talk about he's communicating to the cabinet while Michelle's communicating to the principals. You're also communicating to the board, and then you communicate to the parents. And I think you hit on an important part. I think the staff, they want to know before everyone else knows.
Well, and part of it is, you want to let them know, but even more important than just giving them the early scoop, they're going to get questions. Yeah. Their neighbors are going to have questions, why this or why that. Yeah. So we try to get them the full benefit of our thinking with, some bullet points as to why, informed approach to answering them.
Because they're getting, it's January 21st, and your teachers are getting, people are trying to contact them today through emails and text and in the neighborhood and at the grocery store. They want to know, are we open on Monday or not? When is Mitch Young going to make a decision on this weather? Right? What factors are you looking at in this decision? Like power at your schools, power in the community, the roads, what are the things that y'all are looking at?
Well, in the other podcast, we talk about the importance of relationships. And so this is where your relationships are so important, not necessarily talking about with our teachers and our parents at this point, but building relationships with Georgia Power and Sawney Electric, who are our two power partners. Having communications with them to stay in the forefront of what's going on. We have a really large hospital that employs folks. They employ folks from our county and outside the county. So staying in touch with the CEO, Lynn Jackson of Northside Hospital, Forsyth. Our county manager, who runs the operations for the county, and our sheriff. Two very important relationships that we try to make sure that we're in touch with each other throughout a winter event, or a snow event, just so that we're all on the same page as well as much as we possibly can be. And when you have a unified message, it's a stronger message, and it shows everybody that, hey, we've all collectively thought through everything on this, and so those relationships are huge. Yeah,
very smart, getting all the important players in the community involved. Because I know a hospital, it impacts their staff if you decide to close school. Yeah, because now their employees have got to stay.
Those doctors and nurses have kids at home, and it's a tough. That's why. And you and I joked off air a little bit ago about waiting until that last possible minute. Trying to keep your schools open is something that we learned during the pandemic. Our kids need to be in school as much as you possibly can have them there, so long as it's safe. Yeah. But our community, this is where we're part of an economic driver as well, and your working families need to be at work, and so we do never ever do not want to put anybody's safety at risk, but to be able to make that call as accurate as you can. Not as fast as what some parents would like.
Yeah, I think that's a great point for our communities to know, and also our employees in the school district to know. You're as superintendent and your team, you're balancing all of that information. And you're trying to do what's best for the kids, but you also are trying to do what's best for their parents and the business community. Play an important part in that economic engine.
Yeah.
Because when we decide to close, that means parents can't go to work,
Absolutely.
or a large number of them. How does your relationship work with the local emergency services? You talked about your board member used to be there.
Yeah,
but how does that work?
For sure. Well, it's in that chain of relationships that we have, or in that network of relationships we have. I mean, it's vital. And so that would be a relationship between our safety chief and our local emergency chiefs. They're in constant communication when something like this is happening. You know, we all sort of operate at our levels of the your organizational hierarchy. But the more conversations you have, the more on the same page we are. Yeah.
And as far as the power companies you mentioned, is that one person on your cabinet or facilities making most of that contact? Or is it multiple?
Actually, in the case of the power companies, those are some personal relationships I've developed that I'll actually be in touch with those. And when I can't, our chief of staff Josh Lowe will be. And
that's good. Ideally, sometimes with these weather situations, you can't do this, but how far in advance do you like to inform parents if you're going to have to close school? Let's take a midweek weather emergency. Let's say it's a Tuesday morning, you're watching some impending weather come, whether it's tornadoes or what. In an ideal situation, what time of day do you prefer to inform those parents and businesses, hey, we're going to have to be closed tomorrow?
Well, okay. Before I answer that, let me go back. You asked the question about the power company.
Yeah.
Matt Wark is our chief of facilities. To be fair, and Matt will watch this.
Yeah.
Matt is probably the first contact with the power company. So I want to make sure I clarify that, because Matt will wear me out if I say that. But,
get him, Matt.
But our two local, our two local power company bosses, I'll be in touch with too. But I do want to clarify that.
You're talking to them twice a day. Matt's talking to them 20 times.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, then I'd be remiss if I didn't clarify that. But in terms of making the decision, one, we're gonna make the best possible decision with all the different factors that go into that. Those factors being, can we get your children to and from school safely based on the roads? Can we get the buses rolling? Do we have power at our schools? And one that most people don't consider, but 40% of our teachers, or almost 40%, live outside of our county. I say our teachers, our staff, teachers
they got to be able
staff,
to get to work.
They got to be able to get there. And so if any one of those factors, if you got no power, you're not providing heat, but you're also not providing lunches and breakfast. If you don't have people, you can't open the cafeteria, or you can't open the classrooms. And subs are the same way. So those are all the different factors that you've got to take into consideration, and that's why it's so important. We can talk about this in a minute, but that you have connections with those superintendents in surrounding counties, because that's where your people live sometimes. But what we tell our parents is, at the absolute latest, we'll let them know by 5:30 a.m. on the morning of an event, of a weather event. Would I like to be able to let them know the night before? Absolutely.
Sure.
And when I don't let them know the night before, I am lit up on social media. Cost of doing business, I realize. But it's because weather patterns can change rapidly. And the last thing you want to do is keep kids out of school when they could have been there.
That's right.
So an event that we anticipate coming up. Now we'll look back at this whenever this airs, and we may look back at this and be like, oh, it wasn't. But it seems pretty imminent that something's coming. Yeah. So when it's imminent, it's much easier to go through your process.
Yeah.
But
And do you think a weekend helps? Like it's coming and supposed to start on Saturday and Sunday, as opposed to being a Tuesday. Does the weekend kind of help buy a little time?
I think I would say yes, but I also can remember 2014 when we were all certain that it wasn't going to come in till that, I think it was Monday night. Yeah. We were pretty certain of that. I may have the day wrong. And it hit about 10 o'clock that morning, and we had the chaos all over the Atlanta area. That's right. And that's right. So I'm not gonna take anything lightly. Right. Yeah. So it would be great if it would hit on Saturday. My prayers are just don't hit while we're trying to get buses on the road Friday afternoon.
Yeah. I think an important part to our leaders out there, especially our new leaders and aspiring leaders, is, the weather does change. And so what you're hearing Mitch say is that he and his team are trying to get the most updated information they can, timely information, so they can make the best decisions that they can. Once you do decide to close, okay, it's whatever, tornadoes are coming, ice is, we have decided with the latest information from the experts that we need to close. Who do you contact outside of the school district? You mentioned you've got a lot of relationships. You're talking to the hospital, but are there daycares, businesses? How do you, or do you let your social media just handle all that?
So it'll go out through parent portal, so that'll be pushed out to parents. It'll go on all of our school websites and all that, of course. It goes out to all of our Atlanta area news networks, our local news, for Forsyth County News Online. So social media, all the things, right? All the ways that we communicate. But then, as I said, with all of our partner organizations, our partner governing organizations, obviously they'll be made aware right out of the gate. As soon as I'm done with the board and our district staff, and Michelle is working with hers, then I'll be in touch with all of our colleagues and associates in all those places, the hospital, the private school, all of our friends in the in the local Forsyth area.
Good. We were talking off air, and both of us in our experience and everywhere I'm aware of, normally the local private school always follows what the public school is doing. So they kind of advocate the having to make that decision and just follow what.
Yeah, my pal Jake at Pinecrest Academy, he takes great pride in knowing that I'm going to take the hits, and he's just
All right, so we got a lot of changes in superintendent seats. It just seems like there's more and more retirements and people leaving, new superintendents. You mentioned that a year ago, fresh on your start, you were making a weather decision with your board there at a retreat. Talk about that communication and why it's important to keeping your board informed while you and your cabinet and leadership team are going through all this.
For certain, because in our community, and I think any community where you have highly engaged parents, they're going to want answers immediately. And whenever you have a situation at our schools, whether it's a threat or something else, I always have to remind families that we don't operate on social media's timeline. We operate on a timeline of being accurate and making sure we have all the facts, right? In a situation like this, I want to make sure that our principals, our district staff, our teachers, and our board, right up front, our board, because these are the ones that are going to be fielding the questions. Yeah. And our board members they are highly engaged with our community and well respected, looked upon, and they're going to get as many phone calls from their constituents as our principals or myself or whatever we'll get. I want to make sure they have the why behind the what as well as the what, so that they're prepared to answer those questions.
Perfect. New superintendents, aspiring superintendents. That's why it's important to keep your board informed. Just like Mitch said, they're getting phone calls, they're getting texts. They can be a great conduit of information if you give them the information that they can share. The last thing they want or you want or need is for them to say, I'm not sure what the superintendent's going to do next. So great point there. Let's talk about this. Michelle with communications. Like it's Wednesday right now, bad storms coming in this weekend. When will Michelle maybe begin pushing out any information related to this?
Yeah, so one of the things we did after last year, and you might say it's in reaction to, social media. You're not going to change people. People that want to be upset are going to choose to be upset. But last year, I put a letter out at the time of our first event, kind of explaining how this process works. Mm-hmm. People aren't going to take the time to. Yeah. Not all people are going to take the time to read a letter, but we live in a visual age, and so what Michelle and her staff did this year, which I thought was great, was they put together a video in which we explain how this process works, what it looks like, all the factors that we take in there, and that actually got pushed out last night.
Oh,
You know, and
was that just pushed out internally, like
so
to parents, or is it on your website?
So it probably is on our website now. It should be, because it was shown at the board meeting. But that was pushed out to all of our stakeholders in Forsyth County. Yeah.
Another great thing, GAEL members, go check out Forsyth County School System. See if you can find that video. It'd be a great thing. You may pick up on some tidbits that could help you. Now, you make a decision to close school. You do all the communication. Of course, now, sometimes I tell new superintendents, now the big question is, well, when are you going back? So talk through that process.
And you,
it's the first thing they want to know.
You hit dead on what I thought last year the hard decision would be make to close or not close. I quickly learned that was the easy one. Mm-hmm. That the harder one is deciding when to come back, because you may have clear roads on 85% of your of your community, but you've got those areas that are shaded, or up at the hills, or where have you, and back roads that are still frozen. And so that becomes a much more difficult decision, trying to decide when to go back. And quite frankly, what we learned last year is that where you just can't get everybody back, that you need to, and if there happens to be a road or two that buses can't get to, we'll reach out directly to those parents and say, listen, we don't want to put anybody at risk. We're not sending buses to your road today. Your children's teachers are aware of this, so there will be an online learning option for that. There will be time to make that work up. But we're going to come back, and it's just we don't want to hold up the other 85% because of the 15%. Now, that might be a stretch, the percentage wise on that, but point being is there's not going to be a perfect situation if you waited for every ice cube to melt. We'd be out until March.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point you bring up. It's amazing. Those transportation directors, they know the roads that are historically they already know. Your transportation, he or she knows exactly which roads, which routes are going to be issues. So those are great points that you make. When your team, those factors about making that decision, talk to our listeners a little bit about, because the rest of the school district staff, they're at home. Hopefully they've got power and they're watching Netflix and they're whatever. Talk to them about what your team is doing that day, on that off day, as far as the schools, the property, and the roads. Again, we talked about it on the front end at the beginning, but now we're in the storm.
Yeah, no, I mean it's regularly scheduled, constant communication, and so what I mean by that is we'll have standing teams time meetings that we'll get together and talk through the latest status. So our transportation will give a report, facilities will give a report. Ultimately, after those come in, then our student safety and support chief will give his report and what he's hearing from the weather services and everything else. So we'll meet in teams, or if we all happen to be able to make it into the district office, then we'll meet in person. But generally, it's going to be a teams meeting, and we'll review all the same things that we've just articulated. We'll do that, like I said, 2-3 times throughout the day. In between those times, I'm talking in my case to our metro area superintendent colleagues, as well as to those who are not in that RESA but that are direct neighbors or where we get a lot of our staff from, and I'll be talking to them about their conditions there as well. And and then we'll in essence is going through the same process until we get back. Yeah,
great point. So again, new superintendents or aspiring superintendents out there, you're hearing all these steps that are having to go on. So Mitch is going to have people, if they have to close for a potential ice storm, that day that everybody else is at home, somebody's got to walk basically every square inch of that school, looking for pipes, looking for issues, making sure about the power, riding the roads. So, and he's getting that information all day from his leadership team to help him make the most accurate decision for the following day. Well, and it just continues.
Yeah, this is where people don't kind of realize behind the scenes where your principals are 240-day employees for us, and our head custodians, and so unless like in an ice situation, which we may have, which changes changes a lot of it safety wise. But those principals are expected to, if by all means possible, get to the building with their head custodian to do exactly what you just described, to be walking that school, to be looking for burst pipes, to be checking the HVAC units outside. None of them have HVAC training, I'm sure, principal wise, but they can spot a cloud of smoke or a puddle of water, and so they're doing that, and we'll actually have teams meetings on each day with our principals as check-ins as well, just to find out what's going on at their school, how their online learning systems are working. In an ice storm, we also need people to just exercise common sense, and if kids have no power, we've got to trust that they're not lying. And we got to have built-in makeup time for that work to get done when they get back to school.
A lot of considerations to take, GAEL members, you aspiring principals and aspiring superintendents. This is all part of what, back when you're a teacher and you just think, oh, I wonder if we're going to be off tomorrow or not. But there's a lot of hard decisions and a lot of working together with a lot of different entities, not just in the school district, but outside. Well, Mitch, thank you. Aspiring superintendents will really get a lot out of this to help them come up with a plan.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We really appreciate you and look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Ben.